Hey everyone, it's Brett Hornby here. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Finally get back into another personal vlog, as it's been a while since I've been making any personal vlogs, so I've been much more busier with my primary sports content. But here, up to number 94, I'm just going to call this one Neighbors, Dogs, and Other Dog Memories. As you realize, as time goes on, you realize how much dogs have an impact on your life. I mean, especially, I grew up with a couple dogs that I've shared in videos in the past. However, I definitely have lots of memories of neighbors' dogs and other dogs. I'm not quite sure exactly how you can start it off with, but it always seems like in the immediate block where I used to live, a lot of people seem to like to have Shih Tzus. Must be a rule or something that, you have to have a Shih Tzu that barks a lot and does its growling alien thing, but it always seems like there's this one house on the block that most of the time there's been different people living in that house. They always seem to have a Shih Tzu. I mean, don't understand why. They must be low maintenance, but you just have to deal with the extra barking, or I like to call it growling alien thing, is what small dogs do when they're growling. It just sounds like an alien to me. But I know that one story always gets shared in my family get-togethers. This is like when my younger days that we had, long-time neighbors next door. They always had a couple dogs. I know there was one that I've always remembered, and actually, as I get older, they counted on me enough to dog sit, and I'll share a couple dogs that they have. But I remember, my mom always shares the story. I don't remember this actually happening, because I think I was like 2 or 3 at the time. We had our border collie that was friends with this neighbor's dog, and this will definitely tell you how dogs, they have their different special bond with other dogs and how they feel concerned for other dogs. But I know this dog, I'm not too sure what breed they had, but Titan was the border collie we have, was friends with this dog. And then one night, my mother goes to the story that Titan was acting very funny, and then suddenly, the neighbor was suddenly driving away, and then Titan suddenly, cried and growled, or like cried and howled, and then shortly after, when Titan cried and howled, the neighbor called my mother and said, "Oh, our dog just passed away." And I said, "Yeah," because I talked about the dog, suddenly, was acting funny and strange, and was a little distraught, and then suddenly it cried and howled, like it sensed at that moment when that dog passed away. So it's definitely interesting to hear that story. I'm not too sure if that dog was sick prior to passing away, but it was just weird how Mom shares a story about how Titan, our dog, was feeling obviously distressed, and then suddenly it cried and howled, and then 2 minutes later, not even that, Mom got a phone call and mentioned about that dog dying. But that was that dog. But another dog that I remember, going back to the Shih Tzu, that they had a Shih Tzu, and Shih Tzus definitely have long lives. Is I remember, this dog always being next door, and I remember that dog's name was Muffin, and it was a black Shih Tzu, and it was well behaved, well disciplined. You always hear the barking, but it's with all dogs. But I remember, in my early days, well into my late teenager years, that this dog was always around, and that dog I was actually counted on to, dog sit while the neighbors went away on vacation. You could tell that dog was very disciplined. Like it was time to go out. He knew that it was time to go in for the night when I come in and set the dog in, and it went straight to the cage and went right into the cage, knowing that that's where the instructions I was given for the dog gets to stay in the cage, and that's where it sleeps overnight. And then in the next morning, you hear that cage rocking, because you all of a sudden hear the dog happy that I'm here to let it out for the day. And it was just very disciplined how that dog was very regimented, and I was impressed by that. But then I know that they had a daughter that babysit myself and my sister at the time. I'm not too sure if that was her dogs, or I know after Muffin, I think Luffin lived to be 17 or 18. I'm not too sure. I mean, I remember this dog pretty much all my life, well into my teenager, and that's when I started dog sitting for the neighbors. But they had two dogs, and they were very interesting. I remember they had one dog. It was a shepherd. It was like a generic shepherd. This is the same neighbor I'm talking about. And they had I'm not too sure about what breed the other dog was, but I remember it was named Sammy. And all I remember those two dogs is they never got along. They always fought, Sammy and Tucker. I mean, Sammy was more the playful dog, and then Tucker was just kind of the quiet, stubborn dog, but they never got along. And it was always sometimes tough to put them in and, separate them. I know sometimes they ask to separate them, but then sometimes they fight before I get to separate them when they put them in for the night. But there's some reason it looked like an unlikely combination that they live each other. They never, ever, ever got along. And then Tucker, which is the shepherd, he tends to like to be, the jerk dog because, dogs like to play fetch. Well, Sammy always loved playing fetch, that I remember. There was times I come over next door, just want to play fetch with the dog. More with Sammy. Sammy always played along. Tucker was always just going around minding his business and, sometimes does patrol. But what happens sometimes is sometimes Tucker just comes in and he takes the ball away from Sammy as I throw it to Sammy. And then Tucker gnaws on it and then plays the I'm not going to drop it, knowing that if I have the ball, Sammy's not having fun anymore. That's all I remember from those two dogs. But and then eventually those two neighbors, they moved. I believe they were, if I remember, not going to throw out any names, but I think they originally came from Montreal. And I remember they went back to Montreal. This is over 20 years ago. I have no idea what's up with them now. I haven't heard any updates from my parents, or as I know, we're not connected on social media, but that's just that neighbor. But other neighbors, there were a lot of Shih Tzus. But I also remember there was one house, and you see two sides of one dog. I remember it was kind of it was always stubborn and always barks and always growls, acts like the king of the world, and it was kind of looked like a mixture of a Rottweiler and German Shepherd. But it's like, oh, I never want to touch this dog when it's in its yard. And it always barked for all the years. It didn't seem like a smart dog. However, one day, I was walking to the alley, to catch the bus to go to work or go to school or whatever I was doing at the time. I almost crapped my pants because that same dog, the Rottweiler German Shepherd, it was in the alley. And I was like, uh-oh. And then it started running. Like it looked like it wanted a piece of me. But then I almost burst out laughing in tears because then that same dog was growling and crying at the same time. And I was like, God, it was hilarious. Like, how it was crying and growling at the same time, looked all scared. And in the yard, yeah, I'm king of the world, but in the alley, it's oh my God, it felt like it wasn't the same dog. And I thought I almost was going to almost die laughing. How it looked all wimpy, and I kept going on my own business, but it got closer to me, and it just cried and growled at the same time. And then I also remember there was a couple border collies that lived by. Well, this one, I'm not too sure if it liked me or didn't like me, but I know this person had a beware dog on there. But what was funny about this border collie is that it gets my routine. It barks, and when I walk by, being territorial. But there's other times that it stands up on the fence like this, and then it's quiet. And then sometimes we do a staring contest, see who goes first. One time at when I leave the gate in the backyard, the dog's already up. This is the border collie. It's already up, waiting to bark at me. And sometimes, like I said, sometimes I have the staring contest, see who goes first. And there was one time I just, play games with it. I purposely turned around and walked back. Then it started barking at me because all the time it always barked at me as it got closer. And then sometimes it's not up on, a porch or something. that, it just stands there and eventually goes up. It's like, come on, get up on the fence, make it look like you're ready to bark. It was fun to play that. And then I know I mentioned it in an attempt at comedy that there was another border collie, and man, this one couldn't stand me. I called that one the disgruntled border collie. That it just for some reason walked by, and one day I heard, I was like, oh. Although that dog was also funny because it leads into the next thing about how dogs they have to bark at every inch as you walk by. Because I remember this disgruntled border collie. There was a driveway, there was no garage, but it's kind of like how the yard is, like it goes out and goes like that, like an L shape. As I walk by, it starts barking, and then when I get towards the L shape part, it purposely quickly runs so it can continue to bark at me there. And or I eventually set up another game where it's like, oh, you want to bark me over here and then bark me over there. So it's not too much fun going back and forth when I was younger, and then eventually that dog kind of got in the middle. But that's the border collie from hell. It must be related to Dave somehow, the second border collie that was too aggressive. But I heard that one was a female, because I remember the only one time saying, oh yeah, she's growling. I have better luck with male dogs than female dogs anyway, over life. I'm not too sure why, but I always tend to find that the female dogs are a lot more aggressive. But I know that the ultimate memory just for neighbors nearby is, the neighbors I used to shovel snow for, a few houses down. I mean, I remember they had I think they named this one Shep. It was a German Shepherd. It was very aggressive and always barked. And then they always had that snort sound after it breathes. And then eventually that's what I learned about that. You can debark a dog, which that's a questionable practice. But I remember that dog. And then it was creepy when it was debarked. You're and every time I breathed. And they called that one Shep. And then I heard stories from the neighbors used to know for that it was loyal, but it was like everything had to be right, even to get past for the masters. Never mind the neighbors, but the ultimate memories I have with them is they had two dogs, and one was a small collie, and it was slightly barked, but it was that blue heeler. Gotta go back to that blue heeler, that nickname Droopier. Man, that dog was hilarious. Like every time you walk by, it has to put on a show. It runs to the fence. And I remember in our yard, they used to have, I think the previous neighbors, I think they had a flower bed, so you had the main fence, and then there was a small one. And eventually, I was a little bummed that eventually they tore it down, because eventually Droopier, I remember hearing his name was Buddy, he always had to jump on it. He goes, jumps, falling in, jumps in the air, and then he always runs back and forth, and he's wearing down the groove, and eventually that fence, it kept sagging. So then one day I saw it was going, I was like, well, Buddy's going to behave now. But now he runs to the fence and spins around and, barks and growls and does his own thing. However, what was very funny that adds to the story is that when the master's in the yard, it's a completely different dog. Because I remember one day I was walking to go to work, and he was in the yard. Buddy was about to run the fence, and I heard the master said, no, but it still ran to the fence. Jumped up, and instead of barking and doing its thing, it just stood there and panted. It was like, oh, God. Well, that was hilarious, too. But I know that dog provided any memories that you had to put on a show. And that's just all in my immediate block. I mean, other dog memories I have, obviously, this past year, back when, 10 months ago, remember when we used to actually go out and do stuff on the weekend and go to this thing called sport events? Well, I knew at that time, that was like the last time up to this recording that I actually would have fun, but I was about to go to a Roughnecks game, and then that was back, you used to go to the games, and then there was a show going on at the BMO Center. I think it was some home and garden show, but there was a display outside. It had a gazebo, and the guy who was managing it, he had a border collie, and I saw a border collie running back and forth. I think I just saw one person throw a ball, and then came back, and I was like, well, I had to see if I could play with it, and eventually I got to play with that border collie for like a good 5-10 minutes. He didn't want me to pet it, but he just wanted me to keep throwing the ball, and it just reminded me of Titan and the short time I had Dave growing up with the border collie, and that's why it's my favorite dog breed. But that was awesome too. That The owner was cool. Yeah. And that's sometimes, I got to wonder with some dog owners, they get upset that, the dog barks. But it's like, if you're going to get a dog, be prepared to know it's going to bark at people. But I know that that's just my other neighbor's dog and other dog memories. I mean, I know another one was out of town that we had to go to a family funeral out of town, and sometimes dogs, they could do a total 180. Because I remember we were going to another out of town, out of province, to because my mom had a cousin that passed away suddenly, and then we went over to their funeral in another city, and she had a dog. And at first, this dachshund didn't like me. It growled and growled when we all came into her house to visit and just be around for during this tough time. I know she also had many cats, but this dog was named Bailey, and she didn't like me at first. And then I always had to get up, get some water because I'm allergic to cats and dogs. And I remember I had to pop a couple of allergy pills, and one of the side effects is it makes your mouth dry, so I had to keep going up to go get some more water. But then every time I came back, Bailey was there barking at me to come when I come back in the other room. And then, that whole night, it just didn't seem to like me. But eventually, there was potato chips flying around, and I was having some potato chips, and then Bailey came to me, and what's hinting is like, I want you to give me potato chips. So after I got clearance from the owner, I gave some potato chips, and it was a little better. But then the thing that blew me away was then that a couple days later when we had the funeral, she brought her Bailey along with me, and then we were all in the room, it's a somber mood when you're at a funeral, regardless, with everything. But, I had my moment with her, and then next thing I know, I felt something licking my face, and pleasantly surprised it was Bailey. Bailey was licking my face. That same dog that a couple days ago was growling at me and couldn't stand at me, and maybe the dog sensed the whole mood of the room, and maybe realizing that I'm not a bad person, I don't know, but that was like a complete 180. And then that summer I was actually planning on going to that destination anyway, so I came by to visit, because we didn't have one more visit with her before we went back to Calgary from Regina. So I was wondering, how would her reaction be, Bailey's reaction be, if it saw me, several months later. And it was good, and we sat out in the back alley, back deck when I visited her, and just for the curiosity of my allergies. And Bailey and I could have existed, but that was another memory where sometimes a dog can do a 180. Maybe it was the potato chips and the combination of the funeral that kind of did the 180, because most of these dog memories I have, especially that disgruntled border collie, I don't think anything would have done to have that dog like me, or all dogs are territorial. Even going back to the other immediate neighbor we have, when they have dogs, even if they like me, they still have to bark at me when I walk by. And then speaking of neighbors immediately, well, I shoveled snow for her when she moved in after the other neighbors moved out. She always had another, and then went back to another Shih Tzu. I remember this one was named Charlie, and it never liked me, period. No matter what. I always had to get chuff on Charlie, and had to deal with Charlie when shoveling the snow. But, and then what was crazy another 1 week was that apparently Charlie had a brother, of the dog family, and she was watching her dog. So there was 2 dogs, and they both hated me just the same. You could definitely tell it was related to Charlie, because I couldn't stand. I was like, oh no, not another Charlie. But that was just temporary. But I know Charlie didn't like my dad that much either. But I think Charlie hated me even more because I know there were stories that she comes over to my parents' place to have a fire, and then sometimes it's quiet. Because that was back when I still lived over there. As I was lying down, and then all of a sudden you hear barking because my dad has to get up and do something. And I think if I joined them, Charlie would be disgruntled the whole time if I was there, because I think Charlie couldn't stand me. But it's kind of the same as that miniature schnauzer I see nearby when I go to work. That I just wish I could get my head into that dog thing. What makes me the worst human you've ever seen? I don't consider myself a saint, but I don't think I think there's many humans worse than me either. But yeah, that's just my various neighbors' dogs, and other dog memories that I have to share for this personal vlog. It just makes you realize how much dogs have an impact on your life, regardless if you own one or you don't own one, or you remember from the neighbor, or various other moments that I've shared in this video. So as I say, if you want to follow along with this Calgary sports fan's journey, home to Flames, Snip, and Roughnecks and Stampeders, I mostly do talk Calgary sports on my YouTube channel, but I also do personal vlogs, attempt to call me once in a while to take a break from that. And I also do share my experiences I'm on the road at sport events, I mean, whenever I get to do those activities again. So if that all sounds like you'd be interested to watch, to follow along with this Calgary sports fan's journey, you know me too, and just make sure you like, subscribe. I also have my other social media links down in the description below for other ways you can follow me. So as I say, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.